I never believed in ghosts until my dead father showed up at my sister's wedding. That's quite a line. In fact, this is the first line from a story by Durham-based photographer Alex Berner during a workshop I taught years ago. The moment he delivered that line in the workshop, I was completely in, and so was everyone else in the class. In fact, it's such an interesting opening that I've been talking about it for years. Now, when we tell stories, one of our objectives is to engage our listeners. And you have an opportunity to engage with the very first words to leave your mouth. And yet very few people ever capitalize on this opportunity. So today's tip is all about opening lines. Now, the most common type of opening line that I hear is illustrated with the following examples. I moved to Durham 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, I took a trip to Costa Rica. Now, these are time and place openers. And while that information might be relevant to the story, it's not very engaging. I mean, take this one. Last week, I went to Whole Foods. Okay, so at least part of the story is going to take place at Whole Foods. Great, cool. I'm totally blown away by that. Now let's see Hannah Strom's version of a story that opens at Whole Foods.
There's nothing that can make you feel quite as shitty about your body as taking a trip to the Chapel Hill Whole Foods.
Okay, so Hannah is giving us the setting, but she's doing so much more. What she is saying catches us off guard. It evokes a sense of curiosity, it reveals a little clue as to what the story is going to be about, and it promises to reveal so much more. The beginning of a story needs to set the stage with contextual details. That's true, of course. There are things that we, as your listeners, have to know in order to understand the things that happen in the story. But you don't have to sacrifice engagement in the process. Think about Alex's opening line from the very beginning. Now let's imagine a different opening. My sister got married 3 years ago. Okay, so maybe that's important to the story. But couldn't it be embedded after a strong opening? Like after the listener is thoroughly engaged in the promise created by that one beautiful opening line? Yes, please tell us that your sister got married 3 years ago, but engage us first. In personal storytelling, an opening line is an opportunity to engage your listener with an evocative statement or exciting rising action. For business professionals or academicians, the principles of engagement are similar, but take on a slightly different quality. Now, I found that in the professional world, when giving a talk to an unfamiliar audience, the most common opening line looks something like this. My name is Jeff Polish, and I study the molecular mechanisms that lead to the onset of type 2 diabetes. So this is a category called What's My Name and What Do I Do? Or What's My Name and What Am I Going to Talk About? Seems pretty standard, it seems appropriate actually, and it's a great way to get started. And yet I cannot think of two less engaging things to say in an opening line. Like my name? That's the least interesting part of who I am. No one's going to remember because they don't care about you when you say it. I mean, they don't care about me. I propose flipping that and doing it comedian style. Skip the name part, engage people, make them care, tell a great story, give a great talk, and then at the very end say, my name is Jeff Polish and that's my time, just like a comedian. And another thing, maybe reconsider the boilerplate title of your talk as the very first thing you say. Instead, what you want to do is you want to make it personal. You want to bring them in, like this example right here.
I'll never forget that day back in the spring of 2006. I was a surgical resident at the Johns Hopkins Hospital taking emergency call.
So this is a talk given by Dr. Peter Attia at the TED Med conference in April of 2013. It doesn't bowl us over like some of the previous opening lines, but it does draw us into what promises to be a compelling medical drama. You can tell this is important because he says explicitly that he will never forget this day. And what we come to find out is that the medical drama ties directly into his work on type 2 diabetes, but he doesn't even mention his research until he makes us care deeply about a profound problem that will ultimately be addressed with his research. Now, we have to care if we are going to get anything out of a talk. If I don't care, I'm not going to remember your name, and I'm not going to remember that your talk was about type 2 diabetes, you know? So here's another quick example. Jamie Fold, who works at the Center for Advanced Hindsight at Duke, used to give a talk that opened like this. How many of you have ever texted while driving? It's compelling, it's confrontational, it's impossible to ignore. And that's what we want. We want to be impossible to ignore when we give our talks and tell stories. Your priority is to draw your audience into your world. So some of you might be thinking, oh my God, I've told so many stories and given so many talks without a compelling opening line. Were my talks horrible? No, not at all. I mean, maybe they were. I have no idea. But your story's not a failure if you don't deliver an engaging opening line. It's just that you have a nice opportunity to grab your listener from the very beginning, and it's a good idea to seize every opportunity you have at your disposal. Now, there's so much more I could say on this topic, and I'll undoubtedly come back to it in a future episode. But for now, I hope this was interesting and gives you something to think about the next time you want to hold court. And if you made it this far, I hope you'll let us know and let us hear some of your favorite opening lines, either from a personal story or a talk that you gave or a book that you read. I hope you enjoyed this first installment of the Monty Story Tip of the Week. My name is Jeff Polish, and that's my time.